We'd like to welcome you now to refereeing the breakdown. As you know, this is going to be hosted by Karl. Karl's going to take you through some of the protocols and the principles more than anything else of what you need to be looking for. Not just what the PGMOT are doing, but how this can apply to you regardless of your level anywhere within the game. Karl, over to you.
So, I mean, probably the big thing to say about the breakdown is nothing has really changed. Everyone's come out with their new variations or law variations here and there. It's still the same law. We're just looking probably to tighten up our interpretation and how we reward and what we're looking for. But as I said, nothing really has changed too much. But you've probably seen from the start of the Premiership and even the start of the Southern Hemisphere, the referees, it took a little bit of time for the referees to get used to this and the players. And you probably saw a lot more penalties in the first 1 to 3 rounds of both Southern and Northern Hemisphere competitions. And then I think we got to a sort of level where literally it kind of sort of settled and everybody bought into the process. So it's got a lot better recently, which I'm sure you'll probably all agree. So sort of, again, I'll go through the philosophy of it and little bits and pieces, and then it'll come through with some of the clips and exactly what we're looking at. But the first sort of slide, reward the attack and defence in equal measures. And that comes to equity of the game. That's not just at the breakdown, that's everywhere. So we're looking to reward attacking and defence equally. And that's about being in the best position. And you'll probably hear this position quite a lot, being the best position to do that. We've got to look at both. And you'll probably hear me again say this sort of along the lines of, it's about the story of the game. What you do in the first minute, you've got to be doing the 80th minute. And if you're watching the game or your assessor's watching the game or someone's watching it, they go, what you do in the first minute, does it match up with the rest of the game? So, and that's where it comes to rewarding the attack and defence. Have you done that equally through the game, or have you just been looking at one sort of team and thinking, I've got to keep going with it, rewarding the attack, because I want that continuity. Certain games, you're going to get that imbalance of where, you get a scrappy game, you're going to have to roll your sleeves up and really referee that breakdown. And that involves both teams. Keep the players legal at the breakdown as per current law. Again, as I mentioned, the law hasn't changed. And again, this is about being in a position. Can you get in a position to see the ball? Can you get in a position to be able to prevent players from doing something potentially illegal? Can you get there early enough to stop players doing that? And then if players are illegal to start with, or they are legal, can you talk them off quick enough that hasn't affected the ball speed? Or is it a case of, again, the story of the game, if I've set the game up right, I've penalised early doors in the game, the first 10 or 15 minutes. And again, we'll go back to this, how you set up the game, what kind of game do you want? And it's about setting up that game well. And if you can penalise early, then you set up the game for the rest of it and players know where they stand. So if you get a quick not rolling away penalty, players are going to think, actually, I might hesitate to actually go and go for the ball to get a holding on penalty to Jackler, and therefore you might get that continuity in a different way. And then give understandable decisions. And again, this leads into, sometimes it gets a little bit funny with give understandable, because what one person understands might be different to what other people understand. But looking at the general public, and again, it comes down to the story of the game, how you've set it up. If you've given a not rolling away in the first minute and people can see why you've done it, and you give another one in the 75th minute, people go, okay, I kind of get that, because what you did at the start of the game, you've kept refereeing, and I understand why you've done that. And obviously, with our signalling and things like that, it helps, as well as you give the signal and you explain why you've done it. Listen, the Jackler is fine. He's in a strong legal position. However, the player's just not rolling away. So I can't reward you, and we move on. And I think that helps with both teams as well. So it sort of accumulates, again, the philosophy. What we're looking at probably, and this can be attributed to all levels, is what I've mentioned, is how you set up the game is key. How do you want to set up? What kind of game do you want? If you want a free-for-all at the breakdown and you want people to go hard, well, then that's how you're going to set up the game, and that's what you can hit for 8 minutes. That might not be what you want. From my personal point of view, I like to set up the game, whereas I like to get the tackler out of the way. So I'm not even going to look at Jackler, anything else, and tackler's out of the way. because I want the quick ball. I want that continuity. I want the nines to be able to get there and play, because ultimately that's the entertainment part of the game. And then obviously, as I said, it mentions with the story of the game, how's that story at the end of the game, no matter if it's breakdown, scrum, line out, does the story match up? Or do you look at some penalties and go, that's not how I referee the whole game? And that's something you probably can, on review with your PRs or your coaches, look at some of your decision making going, have I been consistent in what I've done the whole game? Has that story matched up? And I think it's key and how you set up the game. And as I mentioned, we'll go into it, where you put yourself in order to referee the breakdown, what position you're in to referee it. So going into the priorities, as I mentioned, we're looking at, which I don't think has changed, tackler, release and roll away. We're looking at east to west. No crawl by the carrier, so not getting that extra roll or extra little crawl to stop the Jackler coming over. Then the Jackler in a strong position, looking for a holding on penalty. Any attacking off feet, so are they trying to seal it or stop the competition? Attack inside entry, and then as always, foul play is going to override any of these technical aspects, which again we'll go into a little bit later. But that's kind of the sequence we look at and how we're trying to referee that 1 to 2 second breakdown, looking at all these 6 or 7 things. So as you can imagine, that split second you get to referee, you've got to look at a lot of things, but that's what makes you better and better and get that better picture as you move through the levels and as you're looking to improve at the breakdown as a referee. So looking at the tackler, release and roll, again, no change to our previous philosophy on how we've refereed this. Tackler system must show clear release, and that might vary from referee to referee. If you're not in a position to see that clear release, you might referee it slightly different. But from my point of view, you want to see a really clear release and then back on the ball. And then the tackler must release and move immediately. And again, that's to stop him rolling. The first one you'll see here, 8 on the wrong side, tries rolling out, but slows the ball down, and it's an easy advantage to give. So we see it again. Ideally, we want the 8 to roll out as quick as he can, not prevent the ball coming away. And it's a really easy decision. And we're looking at east to west, but I appreciate sometimes he might roll east to west and interfere with that player coming in. So that's where we look at the sort of, well, he might be a little bit in the side, but he has tried rolling. The ball's there, let's play away. We don't need to blow that penalty. But it might be a case of he's rolled the east to west, he's affected the clear out, the guy is over the ball looking for the jackal, but we can't reward him because even though he has done that east to west, he's chose to tackle like that. He's fallen that side, so we're more likely to penalise him for not rolling away, even though he has tried to. So as you'll see, more awareness of where they move post-contact as we're looking at east to west for these tackler. But as always, once they've made the tackle, they choose to fall that way. And if they choose to fall that way, they've got to get themselves out of the way. And if they impede or anything like that of guys coming in, that's where we might look to penalise them. Move away from the ball so it's nice and clear for the 9 to come in and get the ball away. And it might mean that they are still lying on the wrong side, but the ball is there available. The 9 can pick the ball up and pass it where we're going to play on. It's only when it causes an issue there that we might look to penalise. But if we can get the ball away, it might be a quiet word going, listen, we need to start getting guys away from the ball or stop rolling that side. If it's not interfered or anything, we don't want to make a massive issue of it. But again, it comes back down to that, again, setting up the game. Those couple of penalties early on that we give for tackler not rolling might set up the game and people might actually realise, actually, I've just got to get out of here quicker and it will stop people competing and we get that fluid game. Ball carrier, again, nothing's really changed here. They've got to present immediately with one dynamic movement. You've probably seen a few of, this happens probably more in 7s, I think, but you've seen a few now in the 15s, particularly in the Southern Hemisphere games, which I think we're going to show you. It's happened in Northern Hemisphere, but it never really got penalised. And you've seen a lot more get penalised now with people taking that extra roll or that little elbow crawl, which prevents the Jackler from getting over the ball and ultimately stops him from competing. And I think there's an example from this weekend, last weekend, in the New Zealand-Australia game, which I think is going to be the video coming up. So you see Rico Arne comes up, gets tackled, should be releasing the ball there, crawls, moves along, which ends with 5 off his feet. So the first offence there is the crawl. Luckily, Australia come away with the ball and they play on. But the first offence is clearly, you see, the 11 gets tackled, should turn and place the ball, but takes that extra crawl, which prevents number 5, Gold, being in a strong position to potentially jackal. So that should have been a penalty against New Zealand for crawling. And again, it is being refereed a little bit more than it used to be, and you've seen a few more penalties, particularly in the Southern Hemisphere, for it. Squeeze ball, again, squeeze ball, we kind of use this. I know obviously age group stuff, they're not allowed to do it, but squeeze ball a higher level normally means you're isolated, or you're trying to buy yourself that little bit of time. So we want the ball to be available. So if they go into that squeeze ball, we're looking for them to present the ball nice and quickly. If they don't, the jackler potentially can clamp on them, and he seals, arms around the body, hands on the ball. That's what we're looking for. He can't just clamp onto the body and lift the body. He actually has to be on the ball, and it makes it a really easy penalty to give for holding on if he's clamped around on the ball. And as I said, when players get into that position, it's normally because they're isolated or they've got into a poor ball presentation position. Again, not held, no change in the focus here. They've clearly got to be held and brought to ground in a tackle. As we mentioned, the tackler's got to release. As soon as they're brought to ground and tackled, they've got to release the ball and present it. And positively, if they can release, stand up and pick the ball up to play on, that's great, because we can move on from there. We've got to not necessarily reward the positive play, but allow the positive play to continue. And then the jackler, which there's been a slight, probably say not really a change in this area, but we're looking to probably reward him that little bit quicker. And that's probably the protection of people flying in and clearing them out, which is probably a little bit more dangerous. We look to protect the jackler that little bit more. So they still got to be in a strong position, on their feet, supporting their body weight, hands not gone beyond the ball or on their elbows, and they're showing a clear lift of the ball. And we're looking to reward them a little bit earlier. And this is probably where in the at the start of the Premiership, start of the Southern Hemisphere, these penalties were given really, really quickly. And they probably weren't as accurate as what we want them to be. We still want them to be given quicker, but we want them to be over the ball, a good tug at the ball, and then reward them. It's not a case of over the ball, quick tug, yep, okay, we reward you. Well, that's where we get a lot more penalties in the game, where we almost, again, use this phrase a little bit, let it breathe, just let it breathe for a second or two, let them lift the ball, yep, happy days, we can reward them now. We don't want to reward that just over, quick lift, then cleared straight away. That's not what we're looking to do. And obviously they've got to enter the breakdown legally. And probably going on to that holding on part of it as well. Ball carrier must not prevent a turnover, must release the ball. Jackler must show a clear lift in action as mentioned, arms and elbow clearly off the ground, and in that clamp, seal, strong position. And again, you hear this sort of phrase of hands on. If you go past over the ball, say a player's trying to turn and present the ball, and you see a player go over with his hands on the ground, we don't look at hands on the ground necessarily as off their feet. In that split second, I use it and a few other people use it as they're searching for the ball. They're actually trying to actively search for the ball. They put their hands briefly on the ground, then they go onto the ball and show that clear lift. What we're not looking for is the players. I think a good few years ago, Sam Warburton used to go way past the ball, wait for the clear, and his hands would drag back onto the ball and try and lift it. And that's what we're trying to prevent from happening, going clearly beyond it and coming back onto it, not actually near the ball and searching for the ball, and he's still in a strong position to steal it and give that clear lift. Here shows one for the Leicester game. And we used to hear the phrase that you didn't survive the clear out, so we're going to play on. It's not about surviving the clear out now. It's about being in that strong position over the ball. The tackler's not there. He's clearly over it, and he almost takes the ball with him. So for me, that's not really changed too much from last year. We would still reward that with last year's interpretation. Same again this year. You're going to reward the same thing. I think we might get a replay from behind, which I think shows it a little bit better. If it does. Yeah, here we go. So he's clearly on his feet. He's not part of the tackle. Down, straight over the ball, good strong position, and takes the ball with him. So, it's a really, really good picture that we want to see to reward. Off feet, attacking players must stay on their feet. So this is, again, to allow a contest for Jacklers to come in there, not to seal off and prevent that contest. Because, again, we want to create a contest legally. We don't want it just to be cut off straight away by attacking players off their feet. So this is an example of a good sealing off penalty. So Kieran Brooks clearly goes off his feet and prevents the red player from going over the ball. She's gone directly off his feet. We want to see him arriving, either clearing or on his feet to create that ruck or tackle offside line situation, which he doesn't do there. But that doesn't mean that everybody's off their feet when they're looking to clear people. I think there's another clip where we use this phrase of drive, not dive. So if there are players on top of the tackler, you can still clear that player by going, you say off your feet, but you'll see it here. There's a player, makes the tackle, he's on top of the tackler and he's been cleared out. The guy hasn't done anything negative by trying to stop that competition. He's clearly cleared that player out on the floor and we play on. What we might get sometimes is we get that situation where the Jackler goes to go for the ball in a jackal situation. He dummies and he comes out. Then you see that off-feet situation. And that's where we're going to play on. We're not going to reward the defence there where they almost come in, step out, and they cause that player to go off feet. We're looking for that negative action where there's clearly where they prevented any sort of contest. And again, that's similar. And probably the hardest part of this off feet is when we get the latches. When you get latches close to the line or doing pick and goes where they go off their feet, but then we're looking for them to reload. If they don't reload quick enough, and there's a player there to try and compete for the ball, that's where we potentially might be looking to penalise and go, listen, I need to see something positive from you. I need you to reload. I need you to step back up so we can allow that contest. And sometimes we see a Jackler go over that player and steal the ball, which he's obviously legally allowed to do because there's no ruck or tackle offside line situation occurred because no one's on their feet. And then attacking entry, again, this is something which has probably been a bit more prevalent this year. We're looking at players to come in, arrive from their own goal line and be square to the tackle zone. And again, sometimes this is really difficult. Again, it's about where you position. Can you see the whole situation? And sometimes you're going to miss these. It's just inevitable. You can't see everything. We look at this thing called the L shape, which one we on it is. It's not about where they end up. It's about how they arrive. So they might end up really looking like they've come in the side, that kind of in and round, but they've actually started square. So they started square, come to the breakdown, and cleared them to the side. We're looking at players who are actually coming in the side and preventing that Jackler over the ball. And the only way they've prevented it is by taking the shortcut of not coming all the way around. They've come in the side. But as I mentioned before, if you've got someone rolling away and a player slightly comes in the side, we might sort of offset them and go, listen, the ball's there. He's in the side. He's not all the way, but we've got the ball here. We can play on. We don't need to do anything. And that's about sort of, good management, again, setting up the game, knowing when you need to blow your whistle, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, I think we've got to... So this one's probably really, really clear. He's kind of overrun the breakdown, which you normally see, and then he's taken out the Leicester player. And that's what you normally see. You normally see a player who's overrun the breakdown, looked at that support line, got the offload, not quite got it, and he's panicked and come back and he's come in the side. I think we see a replay of this, so it probably takes a few seconds.
Well, no, actually, I saw Ben in training a few times, so he's got like 5 or 10 that could rival it, but...
There we go. So he's slightly overrun the breakdown. Seven's going to be over there to compete for the ball, and he's coming at the side. And again, as I said, with all these breakdown things, we don't want to penalise everything. We don't want to blow our whistle for everything, or otherwise we'll have 40, 50 penalties a game. We've got to be able to be good enough to see the breakdown and referee and interpret what, and I wouldn't say what matters, but is the ball there? Has anything done really, as I said, have they not rolled away? Have they come slightly in the side? Have they prevented anything? We play the ball away. And it might just be a quiet word next one. Listen, you were slightly in the side there. I need you to do a little bit better next time. And that's where the management situation comes in as well with the refereeing. And then, as anything, as we know, foul play will override any technical penalty. So any holding on penalty or anything like that, or not rolling away, if someone comes in dangerously with a shoulder charge, neck grabs, neck rolls, lifting legs and clearing them dangerously, that overrides all these sort of situations. And that's what we've got to be vigilant to when we're looking at, obviously, the breakdown. And again, that comes down to positioning and being where you can see the whole breakdown, see the ball, see players arriving, and trying to see everything. And again, you're not going to get everything. As we said, these happen 1, 2, 3 seconds. You're not going to get everything. And that's where sometimes your team of 3 can help you, where you've got your ARs, if you have them, where they can help with these sort of net grabs, these charges and stuff like that. So, you're not going to get everything, but this is something that you want to try and get, because again, we get it out of the game. As I sort of mentioned before, nothing has really changed at the breakdown. It's that probably trying to be a little bit more vigilant, a little bit more strict with what we're refereeing, and then refereeing the holding on that little bit quicker to protect the Jackler from having to survive that clear out with 2 or 3 big guys coming in from distance and clearing them out. But again, as it comes down to everything, it's how you set up the game, the story of the game, how you want to referee, and what style of referee you're going to be, and that's what your philosophy, and you've got to stick with your philosophy on how you want to referee that breakdown and other things as you go forward, and what type of game you want out of the game. And as I said, you don't always have to blow your whistle. There's times where you can manage it, you can talk to players and stop them from doing it, but you've got to be in that position and that ability to be able to do that.
Well, thank you very much, Karl. That's really useful. And again, this will all be made available on our YouTube channel, NLB Ref Training, when you go there. Now, there's going to be a couple of questions from this, and we've already had a few in. So I'm just going to ask Nick to join us now. Nick, you've got a question for Karl about people supporting their own body weight.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Hi, Karl. Thanks so much for that. Very interesting. You mentioned about the Jackler supporting his body weight. One of the things that does drive me nuts about watching you guys at the top level, I see Jacklers in certain situations, they cannot possibly be supporting their own body weight, but you let it go. So they're an incredible angle, and you're thinking, how on earth is that guy supporting his body weight? But maybe because you're trying to reward him, you seem to let it go. I'm not saying you personally, but at the top level, they seem to let that go. How do you judge whether someone's supporting their own body weight?
Well, I mean, I'd ask the question about, if I said to you, how would you judge it? What would you say to me?
Essentially, if you removed anyone else from that picture, would the guy fall over? That's what I'm trying to say. Because quite often you see some guy kneeling on someone, leaning over, and you think, hang on, if I remove the guy he's kneeling on, the guy's going to go flat on his face, for instance. Yeah. Is it a credible position if there was no one else around, I guess?
And I guess the question you sort of asked, obviously, as we mentioned, you have 2-3 seconds to decide, are they on their feet? Are they supporting their body weight? Now, they might have a knee on a back, but as a referee, you're probably not going to see that. And we go back to that understandable decision. And again, sometimes we get it wrong. I mean, I can admit it. I mean, there's times where you go back and review the game and you're like, he was probably a little bit too long. He probably started on his elbows, then got onto it. But you have that split second. But the pictures you've built up in your mind of refereeing the game, all those thousands of rucks you've seen, you normally see a player who's arriving there. He might have been on his elbow for a second and comes back onto the ball and lifts it. And you're like, well, he's done a little bit wrong. He hasn't done everything wrong, and he's in a good position. So we're going to reward him. Would he fall over? I don't know. I couldn't 100% see, because we can't always see people's feet. Are they flat on the floor? Is he on his tiptoes? Is he too long? If we get there, can we stop him and go, listen, release, and we can play on? But I think the key thing is it's that perception of what you think. Do you think he's on his feet? If you don't think he's on his feet, you penalise him. If you do think he's on his feet in a strong position, you reward him. And you can't sort of say, this is A, B, C, D on how they are on their feet, because they might have gone straight to ground, come back up, gone onto the ball, and you're like, oh, he looked like he was off his feet, but did he get back to did he get back to his feet, then go for the ball? And it comes back down to that. Well, I kind of understand it looks right, and then have you kind of done that through the game? Is that sort of similar? And it might be a one game where, do you know what, I probably didn't get the holding on Jackler situation probably right. So I've seen these pictures. This is probably not what I'm going to reward next time. And this is probably what I want to reward next time. And you kind of build that imagery in your head on what you want. And some of these guys, particularly at the top level, are so quick over the ball. And on there, you're like, well, it looks like it's holding on there. And everyone probably could buy into that's holding on. So that's kind of probably how I would describe it. I wouldn't say they must do this, this, and this, because you just don't have time to see that. You've built up that sort of imagery in your head and you can go, yeah, he looks like he's on his feet. He looks like he's in a strong position. The people coming in to clear him haven't done a great job. So that balance of power, balance of strength looks like he should be rewarded.
Helpful.
Unless he's clearly started on his elbows and you can go, release, you're off your feet, you're on your elbows, and you can tell him almost after, penalty, why, you're on your elbows the whole time. Listen, you're too long for me. And that's what you can help as well, management after.
From Mike Jones about angle of entry.
So we're looking at angle of entry, we're looking at almost hips before hands. And again, this is sometimes really difficult to judge because, again, you've got some really good players. It's have they gone on the ball first with their hand and then flip their hips around? Then they look like they've come in the right illegally. So we're looking for the hips first, then the hands. So that's what you've got to judge first. Have they got their hips around there first, then their hands have gone on the ball? Have they come in, have they moved with the ruck? So as the ruck moved, they've come in at the side. So that's probably the key part of entry for the Jackler is have they got their hips around first before their hands go on the ball? And that's what, again, something you've got to judge. And it happens. Some guys are unbelievable at doing it. And again, it comes back down to positioning. Are you in a good position to see that? Because you see, the Nick Berry clip, what we showed you, he missed the crawling, then he missed the 5 off his feet. He actually refereed the third offence, which was the holding on. But luckily, it should have been a penalty early. And that's not saying he wasn't in a good position, but you're not going to see everything. But you've got to try and make sure that you're in a position where you can adjudge or adjudicate or referee as much as you can in that split 2-3 seconds.
I think we've seen quite a lot of that over the last couple of weeks, haven't we? Where guys have put their hands on and then swung their hips around. And quite really, I think probably about 90% of the time, certainly in the Premiership and the internationals over the last 4 weeks, that's been picked up quite well. But it's about having that wider vision, not looking just at the ball. Now, Mike, do you want to just come back to Karl here? And then I've got something that I want to ask Karl for everybody there. Mike, over to you. Mike, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you now.
All right, thank you very much. It's all right. These headphones don't work. I wondered, because you've answered the question to a great extent, I just wondered whether you had a sort of angle in mind for a rival at the breakdown.
I mean, it varies. Because obviously you don't know where the next breakdown is going to be, how you come into. I'm a big believer of, and again, this is purely from experience. If you follow the nine is going to go into the breakdown more or less at the perfect angle because he wants to get in there and get the ball.
Sorry, Karl, I think you misunderstood slightly. I meant of the players going into the breakdown, are you watching them to achieve a certain angle of arrival themselves?
Yeah, I mean, we want the players to come in nice and square. Are we talking attacking or defence here?
Well, either, I suppose.
So we're looking at both players to come in, but legally. So they want to be coming in square to the breakdown, the tackle first, because where the tackle is. And then if they're coming in square to where the tackle is, then we create that tackle off sideline or ruck. So of course we're looking at both where they come in. What you normally get is you'll normally most of the time get if you're going to get it, a Jackler will be first-ish there, then the defence coming in to clear out. So we're looking for that square breakdown, square clear. But ultimately, you're obviously not going to get. I mean, you're not going to get like a square sort of straight in there. You're going to get slight in, and it's where's your limit? Where's your limit on
I don't know.
an entry?
This is why I'm asking the question, because if you'd asked me, say a year ago or a bit more, then there were some referees at panel level who were saying, anything less than the 180 degrees, that's okay, because it's behind the line. And then you've got, since then, I've heard referees talking about, well, it must be at least about 45 degrees and all that type of thing. But you've been using the word square quite a lot. That's why I wondered what is acceptable to you.
I think, and this is where just you normally get for a side entry kind of decision. It's almost where, again, as I said, that overrun, particularly from the attack. It's that overrun. They've overrun the breakdown or overrun the tackle, and they've almost coming back on that shallow angle, or they've come straight from a breakdown and the breakdown's occurred behind them. They've not managed to get back round. Now, I would never use a 40 degree, 50 degree, because it's just not practical. You can't sit there and referee and go, well, was he 40? Was he 50? Was he 60? It's about that almost game understanding and how you choose to referee. We're looking at the clear side entry. Has that clearly coming at the side prevented a competition, prevented a Jackler getting on, or prevented the defence from getting? And that's how I can't really sort of say to you it's a 40, 50, 60, 70. It's how you understand it to be a side entry. And you've seen more, and they're really clear. The ones that I showed was clearly from the side. I think you're seeing it refereed more and more. And it's not about I use a phrase a lot, speaking to my ARs a lot. I'm like, if you have to think about it, it's not clear enough. If it's like, oh, wow, that side entry, I'm blowing my whistle. Or in other terms of, that's offside. It's not, he looks offside. That is offside. I'm blowing my whistle. And if you have to think about it, it probably isn't the one you need to go after. And if your assessor comes back to you later on review and goes, that's probably side entry, you go, okay, that could be side entry. I probably missed it, but that's where I probably need to recalibrate on the side entry part of it. But it's a very difficult sort of situation where you get 200 breakdowns a game. You just can't referee it where they have to be in a box straight, or you're just never going to get a game. So it's a good question, and it's very hard sometimes to sort of pick exactly what you're looking for. But I think the ones where, again, they're clearly preventing something, it's so obvious that they've come in the side and prevented something, a jackal or a roll, whatever it is.
That's one of the things we've seen in a couple of weeks, isn't it? Where those hands have been on, and the camera angle especially has shown the hips skip around.
Yeah.
And that brings me on to another point. And don't take this the wrong way, Karl. I noticed over the last few seasons, you have tended to referee more out in the wider channel, but this season with the new focus at the breakdown, your positioning has got a little bit closer. It's not just at the 9 like you. And look, you played 9, you can't get out of it. We know that's where your comfort zone is. But actually, what you've done is you've gone from here and you've come back to that sort of smiley face, which lots of guys at community level talk about. And when we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, it's because you wanted to spot the ball and you wanted to spot the offence, and then you can deal with the next thing after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably changed the way I position myself purely because now the breakdown is so much quicker.
Yeah.
As you said, we're looking to reward that Jackler a little bit quicker. So if you're not in position to see the breakdown, see the tackle, see the ball, well, then you're almost potentially refereeing second or third offences. You're not refereeing the first offence, and also you're not being able to potentially prevent someone from doing something. If you can get to a tackle situation quicker and shout, no 7, or whatever it is, you're preventing that straight away. I don't need to blow my whistle. We're playing on.
Absolutely.
So I've got close, and if you referee from a wider out, then you're sometimes going to struggle to locate the ball. So then, is the player on the ball? Is someone coming at the side on the other side? Has someone you don't know? So that's just my personal thing, is to get in that position to be able to referee the breakdown nice and close, because then I can prevent it. And I like a game which flows. I like to be able to get the ball away, and if I can help that in any way, that's how I'll do it.
Super. Now we've got a question from Gary, pretty much on this subject as well. Gary, over to you, mate.
It's interesting what you said there, Carl, about in a community game, many of us probably don't see the first 2, 3, 4, 7 offences, and we get there a bit later. But many, certainly sort of in the higher quality games, many defending players don't actually take that taking off position, to use a phrase that I'm familiar with, and clear out going low, because they're clearing players out and not so much getting over the ball as such. And I think you've touched on it with being there early and actually seeing that first or second offence. But it's something I'm commonly seeing is players clearing out, aim for the floor, because that's where the players looking for the ball are, and tend to come in not taking off. Comments?
Well, I said, I mean, if there's a tackler on top of the tackled player, obviously that's the drive not dive sort of phrase. We're looking, they can clear that out, no problem, because they're looking to take a player. Normally,
even if you've just talked about hips, even you know, gate entry's fine, but even if they're heading for the floor, you'd accept that. And is that different at your level to ours, Carl?
I don't think that's different at any. I think this is something that's through all the levels. And if there's someone there to be cleared, we want them to still be able to be cleared, because you're doing something positive. You're clearing someone out the way, so you're doing something positive. But then what you're looking at, if you're smart as a player coming in, you can still jackal for the ball, because there's no ruck, there's only a tackle situation because no one's on their feet, as long as you're supporting your body weight. But they've done something positive, they've cleared someone out of the way. It's when they go off their feet to seal it, or they've almost just flopped on the breakdown to prevent that contest, which is negative. So we're looking at a negative action. That's kind of where I look at is, if you're going to penalise it, why you penalise it? Well, you know what? That's really negative. There's no one around the breakdown. You've just flopped on the breakdown. That's really, I'm just going to blow it. Or there's a jackler coming in to come on the ball. You're not clearing anybody there. There's no one to be cleared. There's no reason why you can't stand over that ball on your feet, ready to be in a tackle off sideline situation, and then potentially the ruck if someone joins in creating that ruck. So it's all about.
Let me summarise your position then. So if another sort of a player who supports a tackle player drives in, even though it's the wrong angle, and takes an arriving player out of the ruck, even if they're taking him to ground immediately, aiming for ground, that's acceptable, because it's.
You're talking about a defending player trying to come in and taking a tackle.
Sorry, I thought I said yeah.
So a defending player coming in to take a. So someone's over the ball on the ground. Well, then my question would be, why would you do that if you can just go for the ball?
Well, that's what some players do. They take the guy out, the jackler out, or the first arriving player out.
So if you're not in a strong position, if he's already committed the offence, if you're in the right position, you'll pick that up, and the other guy doesn't have to go there. And this is what we see often about cause and effect, and I think that's a really important message we need to get across, that if you don't deal with the cause, then how can you possibly be expected to deal with the fallout? So be there, spot the first thing, deal with the first thing, keep it clean, keep it tidy, keep it according to the focus, and then you won't have to deal with all the other crap that comes out afterwards.
And I think this goes back to, again, it's we use it, the setting up the game. How have you set up the game? If you've allowed that to happen from minute 1 to minute 10, 15, players are going to go, okay, this referee is going to let me get away with a lot more, or and I'm just going to let's go for it. And the breakdown becomes that free for all. If you can get in and referee, manage it early doors, players you'll see, and you see players now, obviously at our level, where if there's a player on the wrong side, they kind of come in, have a look, they go, I'm not even going to jackal for the ball, and move out the way, because they know if they jackal for the ball, the player on the wrong side, we're going to penalise them. So, and that's about setting that game up well. We've gone, well, we're just going to keep hanging out at not rolling until you get that information in. And if you don't, obviously you're going to be leaving the field. If you do, then we get that quicker game, and we potentially don't get as many problems at the breakdown. So it goes back to that setting up the game. But again, you've got to be in a position to referee that first first offence if it occurs.
Yeah. Now, James, we're just going to come to you because you've got a little point on this, haven't you?
I just wanted to sort of agree with Gary in the translation from the senior game down to community level, but I think that the key message from Karl is those priorities on arrival. And we have the flexibility at level 10 to 13 to have an awful lot more empathy and an awful lot more patience and an awful lot more time with players that maybe aren't as high a skill as we would want. But we don't have flexibility on the priorities of the penalties as they come into the tackler, ball carrier, arriving players. And at every level, they are the three priorities, and we position ourselves to manage those priorities. And as Karl's mentioned, we then open our mind to the arriving players and everything else that's going on, regardless of the level we're at. So I think focusing on the angle that they arrive at is very much down to you. As Karl said, set your stall out on the day. You know your skill levels if you're refereeing Ollerton or if you're refereeing Lincoln or if you're refereeing Paviers. You know the skill levels we're dealing with. So you can set reasonable expectation and introduce the game to the players in that first 10 minutes and help them stick to those standards for the rest of it. And I think we can all achieve that at our relative levels based on those three priorities at the start. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, and you might find that you literally blow the whistle 6 times in the first 10 minutes and you're like, God, I've blown the whistle a lot. But then you might not blow the whistle again at the breakdown for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, because players actually are reacting to how you're refereeing the game. And I think players really buy into things when you actually penalise them and they were like, oh, I thought I was legal. I just got, listen, do you know what? I thought you were off your feet. I just didn't think you were supporting your body weight. That was just my thought. And I think you can really, really help players, particularly at all levels. And I do the same at my level as well, that you just say, they go, oh, well, I thought I was doing it. I just didn't think you did well enough there. If you can show me a better picture, then I can reward you in that situation. And players will instantly go away and go, okay, no problem. There's going to be the situation where you do get some players who are frustrated and you've just got to go, listen, that's just what I saw. And they'll frustrate themselves. But sometimes it can just ease that little bit of frustration if you tell them, not every time, but why you've penalised them, even in downtime, going up to a 7, going, I understand what you're trying to do. I just need to see you in a more positive position over the ball, and then I can reward you.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. That it doesn't matter where you are, what game you're at. If you explain that in the right sort of way, then they're going to listen. They're going to take that on board. They may not agree with you, but they're going to take it on board, and hopefully they're going to move forward. Now, Gordon, you've got a question as well, buddy.
Yeah, Karl, good evening, and thanks very much for giving up your time this evening. Much appreciated. So, question I have, and I get quite frustrated, more watching than refereeing, is, but what's your sort of thoughts on people trying to roll away? But obviously, he's being held in either by a knee or the guy on the ground's holding onto his shirt. I mean, that's something we see quite a lot, although he's still getting penalised for not rolling away.
Yeah, and it's really difficult to see it. And it'd be probably even, we've said at our level now, if we penalise obviously the not rolling, and then we see it on the screen that we've clearly missed him being clearly held in, we're probably just going to go, listen, no, and change, which is very rarely going to happen because you're very rarely going to. And sometimes it's really hard to. But how I referee it and how I look at it is, you have tackled that way, you have fallen that way. It's your responsibility to get out of there. Now, yeah, there's going to be that little bit of holding and stuff like that, but that's part of the skullduggery of the game, and part and parcel. You're going to get little bits and pieces of I wouldn't say cheating, but where people can take advantage of it. But you've put yourself there, so get yourself out. So that's probably how I would look at it. You see players a lot, they'll come to go, he was holding me in, or I was trapped, I couldn't roll away, and I went, I'm really sorry, but you put yourself there. If you put yourself there, then you run the risk of being penalised. And that's probably how I would sort of describe it or say it to someone if they're having a pop.
Okay, yeah, fair point. Put the onus back on that player. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Take all the pressure off the referee.
Yeah, excellent.
When was the last time that the referee went and did something deliberately wrong? It's the same as we say about the ball's never committed an act of foul play, so don't watch the ball, watch the players. And that's where we talk about, Karl was talking earlier about the breakdown and some of the things that, foul play over ice. if we're really focused on that ball and we're close in, can we really see the guys who are coming in, hitting with the shoulder? So once we're happy with that ball, and if you notice, Karl does this quite a lot. He gets in, he has a look, and he walks back. It's what we talk about, and you may have heard your coach or assessor talking about post a letter and then walk away. So get in, identify the ball, do the preventative as Karl's mentioned, get back out, open your vision, look around you. What's actually happening around you, not what's happening around the ball. Because I've never known the ball to actually tackle a player around the head. I've never known the ball to tackle a player in the air, but yet we watch the ball all the time. Andrew, I'm just coming to you now because you've got a question for Karl as well.
Yeah, it was simply off that comment. Good evening, Karl, by the way. It's off that comment and discussion you were having with Mike Jones about in at the side. How much does the size of the gate affect your decision?
Again, this is the situation. I mean, if you've got a guy who's presenting the ball, really, I mean, I don't like to use the word the gate because the gate is very, what is the gate? And this comes back down to, I think, how I would referee it, as in the picture that I'm looking at in front of me. Now, if it looks right, normally it is right. It looks wrong, you're like, that doesn't look too square or too so. And it's again, I don't like to use these phrases of like what is in the side. For me, it's what's clearly. Is it clearly in the side? We use the clear and obvious again. It's a difficult question to answer in the sense of how big is the gate? Well, if the gate is this big, because the player's like that, well, then there's no way you can be coming in square. You have to be in at the side. But then if we referee like that, potentially we'd be penalising 30, 40 breakdowns because that's how people have presented the ball. So I think it's about always looking at people coming in. If they've come in, they're slightly in at the side, as we would say, then the ball's there and we're away. Well, let's play on. It's not causing us a major issue. If it becomes a major issue, then we've got to step up and referee it. If we're thinking they're coming at the side and it's causing a problem, then that's where you might go, listen, I actually have to start penalising this and changing the way I do it because this is causing me a major issue. And again, it's about, as I come back to, setting up the game. But it's very difficult to referee the gate because the gate can be different sizes, shapes, as you look around. So I look at it as it doesn't cause you a problem until it causes you a problem. And when it does, that's where you've got to step up and go, right, actually, I need to be better here and actually referee people potentially coming at the side and making it because it's making my life a bit of a problem. But it's a very difficult question. Again, I can't answer it by going, it's X degree, this degree, or whatever it is. So we're looking at square. I was saying like the L shape, or do they look like they're coming in square-ish? Then we're looking to play on. If they're clearly coming in at that sort of, over on the breakdown, oh shit, I've got to come back and I'm going clearly almost like a 90-degree angle, then most of the time we're going to penalise them. But it's a very difficult question to answer.
Great question from Andy, and it's probably one of the hardest that we can ever answer. So when I'm coaching, particularly when I'm coaching juniors, I always teach them where the gate is. It's the width of the body on the floor. And that's only because I want those guys to do it right. It doesn't mean they're going to, and it certainly doesn't mean their adult peers are going to either. And the way I look at it is very, very similar to Karl, is that does it look right? Is it, and I think that clear, we use that word a lot, don't we, a referee? Is it clear, obvious, and material? So is it clearly not square? Is it obviously not square? And then again, did it have a material impact on the next player? So if you look at the back player when Sam goes down with the ball and you've got a player about to try and compete, it's clear, it's obvious, and it is material that the back player clears out from an illegal position a guy who could potentially or is jetting into the ball properly. So they think, other than that, we've all said in the past, clear the rival. We've all said, roll away a bit quicker. We've all said, come through the gate. So it's about that management of those that are on the verges, but then it's the penalising of the ones that are clear, material, and obvious as well. And Andrew, you're the only judge as to what is clear, obvious material in your game, as is Karl, as am I, and right now, as is Joe. Welcome, Joe. Because
so I just wanted to, and literally on that, I was saying we come back to just for example, we had a discussion last year on one clip from I think it was Quinn's Leicester, and we came up with 6 potential outcomes at this breakdown, which you could give, and all of them would have been credible. And that's the difficult thing about the breakdown is you can see it one way, I could see it a completely different way, and neither of us would be wrong.
Yeah.
But I think it comes down to that thing is like, it's almost, yes, it might be slightly illegal. Yeah, it might be slightly illegal, but we've got the ball away. And again, it's that, has it affected anything? And it might be that little bit of quiet in downtime, that quiet chat with someone that listen, you're pushing the boundaries here. I need you to sort of do X, Y, and Z. And it's that. But that's the biggest problem probably with the breakdown is the fact that there are numerous outcomes you can have at certain breakdowns, and none of that situation neither would be wrong.
And I think the more you do in terms of rugby refereeing, and the higher up the levels you get, the higher skill levels you start to referee at, is the more that materiality becomes important.
Yeah.
And as you go up, you lose less of the law and you gain more of the materiality and more of the cause and effect again. Now, Joe, over in the USA, Joe, as anybody in LB knows, came over here and worked in our wonderfully wet and damp climate instead of staying over in the USA. And he was over here on part of our exchange program. Joe, don't tell me what the weather's like over in the US, because I've been talking to guys over there all day and I'm jealous already. Just ask your question, man.
All right. So I'm coming from Denver, Colorado now, up in altitude. And we're actually getting ready. I'm going to be refereeing next weekend. The women's Eagles, they're having a camp, an 8-week camp. A possibles versus a probables game. So looking forward to that. But my question is regarding the Jackler and the action that they have to do with the ball. So my understanding is that it's not just enough to lay hands on the ball. You actually have to start to pull on it. Some players, once they attempt the jackal, instead of pulling, they'll just put their hands on it and then expect to milk a penalty, especially if they're in a disadvantageous position, or we're at the end of the game and 3 points will do it for them. What are the words, what are the phrases that you would have in your toolbox to say, actually play the ball?
So I mean, I would just say we've had it a few times, and you see quite a few of our referees use it. They'll say, "Listen, I need to see you show a clear lift," and they'll blow the penalty. They'll go, "Clear lift of the ball, hold him." But again, it's you want to use your phrases, whatever phrase you feel is comfortable with. But we use you don't want to be lying there. And if they get cleared away and they're like, "Sir, why didn't I get rewarded?" I didn't see you show a clear lift. I need you to actually actively show something positive. You're doing something positive to steal the ball. You're not just lying on the ball. And next time they'll go, actually, okay, fair enough. I've got to show something different. Because again, I think we've had it a few times again this year where players have said to me, "Oh, that's got to be holding." I said, "Well, I didn't see you clearly lift the ball. I just saw you over the ball." And you need to see that positive action.
I can definitely understand the instinct of a player to think that they have to, go back to the old way of the Jackler, which has survived the clean out, and that's no longer the requirement. It's get your hands on the ball and start to play. And I didn't know what the phrase that you would use, because not all the games here that we're able to watch in the States are completely mic'd up to the referee, as maybe BT Sport or something like that has.
You see quite a few referees go, clear lift of the ball, holding. But again, to flip it, and again, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but I'll say it anyway. Sometimes it's if there's a holding on penalty 2 meters out and the defending team from the line, you might slightly change your philosophy. You might not need to see that clear lift because you're thinking to yourself, I can get out of here. He's clearly over the ball. He's in a strong position. He's there. I can get out of here. And it looks like a holding on for all money. It looks like it. And that's where sometimes we use this phrase, you protect yourself, where it's just easy. It looks like it. You call off, because if you call off that player, say, release the ball, you're not, or whatever it is, and they go and score, people are like, well, he was over the ball. Why not rewarding him? Or he didn't lift the ball clearly. So again, it's that balance. I'm not saying you do it all the time or whatever, but sometimes you've got to think of Team C. Team A and B are playing, but sometimes you've got to think of Team C. And sometimes it's beneficial for you to potentially give that. And I'm not talking about someone who doesn't look like in a strong position. They're just flat over the ball or whatever, but they're in a good position over the ball. It looks like a holding on penalty for all money. It might forgot to just give that little lift of it, and it just helps you along. But again, that's you can take it or leave it one. If you want to be a completely stickler, then you might sit there and go, no, there's no clear lift, I can't reward you. But sometimes it can cause a few issues particularly when you're close to the line.
Lovely. Right, I think that's probably as much as we can get through tonight. There's no more questions coming through. Karl, on behalf of everybody at NLD, everybody around the world that's jumped on and has said hello tonight and asked questions, including who's that? James has just decided to pop his video on. James, give us a wave. James Devlin. There you go. James is loving it, even though he's at Murrayfield. We can't have everything. Thank you to everybody who's been on tonight. Thank you to Karl more than anybody else. David's just messaged, thanks, Karl. We've got a lot of messages up and down. Diane's about to wave as well. She's just joined on. So, Karl, listen, we really, really appreciate all the time that you've given from all of us here at NLD. Can I just say thank you very much. Stay safe, good night, and let's look forward to some rugby again. Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you all. Thank you, Karl. Good night.
Pleasure.